the military-to-military exchange is like the weakest point among military relations. And this weekend, Defense Secretary Robert Gates is going to China, and he said he's going to treat China as an equal partner and want to build a stable and a sustainable relationship with China. But at the same time, in South China Sea and in Asia area, China and the U.S. are facing more and more challenges recently. So what do you think of the future relationship in this military area?
Well, I think this is an area that does lag far behind the rest of the relationship. I'm always impressed when I go to China. When I deal with people in the PLA, I somehow feel like it is 20 years earlier in the relationship than when I deal with people in other areas. And I've been working in this relationship for more than 30 years, so I have that kind of personal experience. And the relationship with the PLA is not nearly as far along as it is with most other areas of the Chinese government and society. I think that Secretary Gates saying that we need a consistent relationship with the PLA is extremely important. There's a history on both sides of suspending military-to-military talks when something goes wrong. Frankly, when something goes wrong, that's when you should take advantage of military-to-military ties and increase them in order to manage the problem. But Secretary Rumsfeld cut off relations with the Chinese military after the EP-3 incident in 2001. The PLA has cut off relations after Taiwan arms sales in 2009. This has just been, in 2010. This has just been a kind of style that needs to change. I think, so that's number one. If you don't talk to each other, you can't make progress. Number two, there are issues on which we disagree, and I think, frankly, our disagreement in principle will be long-term, will not be easily resolved. Most prominent among those issues is the rights of a coastal state to decide what ships can pass through its exclusive economic zone and what they can do. And the U.S. position is coastal states have no say over that. The Chinese position is coastal states have a serious, legitimate say over that. I don't think we're going to agree anytime soon on that, but we must agree relatively soon on what we would call rules of the road for ships in that area, so that both sides know how to communicate, both sides have expectations about what their ships in that area can and cannot do, and we have forums for discussion when we see problems coming up. Otherwise, there's going to be some very unfortunate incident simply because we don't have agreement on these basic things, and we need to get out ahead of that, it seems to me. Thirdly, I think we need to have much more consistent military talks at a high level. We currently have annual defense consultative talks. We have occasional meetings of our defense minister level people. We really need bodies that meet more frequently and discuss things in more detail, so we understand better each other's strategic planning, not only what capabilities we're acquiring, but what motivates us to acquire those. How do we see the future? And why are we building the kinds of capabilities we're building to deal with that future? And finally, I think that at middle levels of the officer corps on each side, we ought to establish exchanges that have each of our officers at kind of the lieutenant or colonel level spend substantial periods of time in the other side's military academies, where they train with officers on the other side. The United States does that with militaries all over the world. China is a major exception. But when you do that, each military gets to understand each other, the way they think, why they do what they do, and they also establish personal relationships that can be very important in the future. So I think there's a lot to do on the military-to-military side, and I think the Gates visit is a very, very welcome first step in that.
Yeah, but what kind of major factors do you think are affecting the military relations, arms sales and whatever?
Well, I think there are several things going on. One is clearly China is a rising power. The U.S. is a dominant power. If you look at history, there are always natural tensions when developments occur that change the existing balance. Right? And given that Asia is the most important region in the world, the U.S. has had a huge role in Asia for a very long time now, and will maintain a huge role in Asia in the future. China's increasing military presence in the region, especially on the naval side, inevitably raises a lot of questions that need to be addressed. So I think that's number one. Number two, the PLA is becoming increasingly transparent, but in comparative terms, compared to other countries in Asia and also in Europe and elsewhere, it is not very transparent. But China now has, I believe, the second largest military budget in the world. It increasingly is unveiling, third and fourth generation capabilities. Other countries sit there, and I can tell you the U.S. military sits there and says China has every right to do that, but we'd like them to be more transparent as to why they're acquiring what they are acquiring. What are their ambitions? Why do they see these particular needs? We do that. The Japanese do that. The South Koreans do that. But almost all major military powers do that. And so we'd like to get China more engaged so that the level of information sharing, which increases the level of comfort, frankly, that level of information sharing becomes typical of the rest of the world rather than exceptional. And I think that's a process that the PLA is moving in that direction on. I think we certainly want to encourage them to move farther and faster, frankly, so that we don't misunderstand each other, so we don't get surprised by this or that. I'd say, finally, every military has its secrets. So obviously we understand there are things the PLA will not want us to know. We have things we don't want any other military to know. We're all realists on that. But still, there's a gap here between the level of transparency that we see in the PLA and the level of transparency we see with any other country with a military capability that is sufficient to care about it. And so we really hope to bridge that. And I think as we do, U.S.-China military tensions will be reduced.
Do you think the arms sales to Taiwan will still affect this relationship very likely?
This is an issue on which we do not agree, obviously. And I appreciate the views in China that see arms sales as obstructing the path to unification with Taiwan. I understand views in the United States and in Taiwan that say that arms sales are important for maintaining Taiwan's confidence to expand its relations with the mainland without feeling that it is being lured into a trap. And I think both sides have legitimate concerns. My own feeling is that fundamentally we need to talk about how to reduce the role of military force with regard to the Taiwan issue overall. That will require a mix of things. Some confidence-building measures that military people know how to talk about, some reductions in forces in the area, some clear understandings about what forces will be in the Taiwan theater from any source. And because, frankly, right now, I think the chances of military conflict over Taiwan are extremely small. I think they're getting smaller. But still, the PLA trains constantly, and the U.S. military trains constantly to kill each other over Taiwan. That's a very corrosive process. When military people have as an assignment, you have to figure out how to kill the other guy. It's hard to be good friends. Right? So I think we ought to recognize that the military side of this is very unlikely in the final analysis to be brought into play. If it is, it's a huge failure by both sides, right? And we should reduce that chance still further by demilitarizing the Taiwan issue. U.S. concern here, let me be very clear, and a whole string of presidents have said this. The U.S. concern is that whatever Taiwan's future is with the mainland, it be accomplished peacefully. If Taiwan chooses actively to rejoin the mainland as an integrated part of the mainland, Taiwan's choice. Okay? If there's some other arrangement, a looser arrangement or something, the choice of the parties on both sides. Okay? Our only concern is that this not be done as a consequence of the use of force. So if we can take force out of the equation, we're happy to let things develop as people on both sides think they can.
Okay, thank you. That's all for my interviews.
It's all my pleasure. Good to talk to you.